Joining us for this evening's hearing on the proposed creation of a city rental registry. And I would like to first thank my colleagues who have joined me this evening, Councilmember Beatty as well as Councilmember White. I think some of our colleagues will be in and out as well throughout the hearing. I also want to thank our Department of Development and Building and Zoning Services who put a lot of work and research into the proposal we will be discussing tonight. I would also like to acknowledge and thank our Deputy City Attorney, Laura Baker Morrish, for joining us tonight and helping provide guidance as we have that has gotten us to this point. In its simplest form, a rental registry is a publicly maintained database that lists all rental properties in a city. As you will see, the proposal we will discuss this evening is much more robust than a simple database. The run of show this evening is quite simple. We will hear a joint presentation from our Department of Building and Zoning and Department of Development, followed by invited speaker comments and public testimony. My team and I will also monitor our social media and YouTube streams for relevant questions that may come up throughout the hearing. Before passing the mic on to our directors to provide our presentation, I would like to touch on why we are here today and what has got us here. It is on Christmas of 2022 and also on Christmas of 2023. The city was forced to vacate and rehouse residents from two large complexes, and I think we know them all, Sawyer Towers and Colonial Village. These two seismic occurrences of displacement not only led to unplanned spending of over $9 million of taxpayer funds, but also turn our already strained shelter system upside down. Emergencies do happen, but situations like Sawyer Towers and Colonial Village were and are preventable. These scenarios may garner headlines, but it's the mom whose ceiling caved in over her child's crib in the middle of the night. It's the gentleman who had to sleep in his car for weeks because the walls in his apartment were covered in mold. It's the other countless families who face emergency vacates daily that we don't hear about. And these are problems that plague both small single-family operators as well as apartment complexes alike. And all of these scenarios occurred while going through our current enforcement and court processes. In addition to these real-life stories, there are other realities to consider. We currently do not have a good sense of how many rental units we have in the city and what their condition is. We can only guess. And right now, we are in a housing shortage. And if we know this type of data, know this type of information, it would help us to make even better investment decisions. For many rental properties, we have no reliable way to get a hold of the owner or someone in charge should an emergency arise. Yes, we can go to our county's website and see who the owner is or who the entity that owns it is, but that's not the same of who is in charge of taking care of that property when an emergency arises. Emergency vacates at smaller scales occur far more frequent than one would think, adding constant strain to our shelter system and increases on our rates of homelessness. These are the realities we have to face as a city. And as we continue to grow, these issues will have a greater impact on everyone unless we find a way to start addressing it and being proactive. I am a strong believer in equity and dignity in housing, meaning no matter what zip code you live in and what the price point of your rent, you have the right to safe and healthy housing. The same type of housing that I would want my family to live in. The proposal you are going to hear about this evening is not a silver bullet by any means. Nothing that we come up with is simply a silver bullet. All of these things that we have done, housing for all of the enforcement changes that our administration has made, all works in tandem to meet our housing issues. But this is certainly a tool that will help us to address the issue I just outlined. Also, I understand that some are concerned about the impact this will have on their business, which is why I'm stressing that this is a proposal and that we have every intention to incorporate feedback that will lessen the burden on our housing providers while maintaining the spirit behind why we are pushing for a registry in the first place. We want to get this right. We want this to work for Columbus. And I know that there are many stakeholders in this room, many stakeholders that we will continue to engage with. Our renters and our residents, of course, being first and foremost, but we also understand that our landlords, our housing providers, are also businesses. And so we want to make sure that we have a balanced approach that meets the moment. And so to that point, we are planning to have at least another hearing later this fall to go over actual legislative language and administrative details on how the registry will function. Again, I want to re-emphasize, what is before us is a draft proposal that we are working with stakeholders on both sides of this issue on. And I am committed to making sure that whatever we bring forward reflects the feedback that we have seen. So no, there is no ordinance number. There is no legislation just yet, because we are continuing to work with you and community to bring something forward. Between this hearing and the next, we plan to continue to engage stakeholders and continue to ensure that the final version of this initiative is a product of collaboration and the lived experiences and expertise of those who operate in the rental space and call Columbus home. Before we go into our presentations, I do want to take a point of privilege and see if my colleagues have any opening remarks before we get started. All right, thank you. With that, we will turn it over to Director Scott Messer with our Department of Building and Zoning and Deputy Director Hannah Jones with our Department of Development for the presentation. The floor is yours.
Councilmember Bankston, other council members, thanks for the opportunity to be here tonight to talk about this proposal. We really appreciate the partnership that we have had up to this point to really work through some of the proposal and the details. Let me just say that coming from the Department of Building and Zoning Services, largely a regulatory department in the city, it's not lost on us that sometimes these types of proposals can seem burdensome and challenging for people to see go into effect. But as you mentioned, the data that we need from this registration, information we're going to get from the conditions of the property, the opportunity to be working with landlords on a more proactive basis, these are all going to be wonderful things that are going to come from this registry. And we're mindful that when we put this registry out there, that we're trying to minimize costs. We're trying to make it as simple as possible for folks to comply with and leverage technology to make it easier. So we have some guiding principles where we're hopeful that we strike the right balance between putting something into place that's really helpful for the city while at the same time making it as simple and easy to implement as possible. Hannah from the Department of Development has some details that she's going to go over and work through some slides. And again, we're just thankful to have the opportunity.
Thank you, council members, for the opportunity to speak tonight. Oh, are we on? Yes. Okay. All right, so I believe that the director did a very good job of capturing what our main goals are. First and foremost, it's to establish an annual registration process, obviously to capture very critical data that is important to us for a lot of decision-making functions, as well as to just better understand the housing landscape in our community and the conditions of that landscape in order to develop programs and policies that align with the needs of our residents. And then third, as the director stated, to begin to integrate a more proactive inspection process that does not rely so heavily on a complaint-driven system and allows us to better engage on the front end with properties that may need either more investment or more intentional inspections or engagement with tenants to avoid some of the catastrophic situations that you mentioned earlier. So how do we plan to do that? First and foremost is to just collect information. So the very basic registry requirements at this point is obviously the basic information about the property itself. I do think it's important to point out that if you are part of other licensing policy or procedure within the city, you would not be doing this. So if you're a short-term rental, rooming house, hotel, motel, obviously that is a separate process and you would not be doing both. This is strictly for rentals that do not fall into those other categories. The owner, and contact information for that owner. Obviously, if the owner is not a natural person, so if you have an LLC or a corporation, our desire to have a natural person named so that we are able to get in touch with them. We also are exploring the importance of having a localized contact. To your statements earlier, council member, we do run into scenarios where it is very beneficial to have access to somebody in a very immediate circumstance in order to either serve a resident who has been vacated or hopefully to prevent a vacate and know that we have maintenance that's going to happen in a timely fashion, get water turned back on, all of those things that ensure that we don't have to take somebody and displace them quickly and often without their belongings. Right now, we are looking at a fee of $40 per unit with a max of $5,000 per property. So that would be an apartment complex with a roughly 125 units, so to speak. Obviously, that would be by property. So if you own multiple properties, then it would be up to the $5,000 max per property if you had that many units. Yep, sorry. These mics are scary. Okay. It's only one or the other. As Director Messer stated, there is a desire for us to not be overly burdensome. We recognize that for a lot of folks, they may not own a large portfolio of units. They may only have 1 or 2 properties. So if you fall into that category under 4 units with no outstanding code violations and no recent emergency vacate orders, our goal is to have an affidavit submitted that states that your HVAC, hot water, electrics, and fire protection systems are in good working order, and that that unit is compliant with all local housing and fire codes. Really, our focus, as you will see for all of these inspections, is on the core mechanicals that can impact and are usually most likely to create a vacate scenario. So we are not necessarily looking to have every single small item covered, but really what are the main things that we need to do to ensure that somebody can remain safely in their house. For properties that are over 4 units, back to the mechanicals, what we would like to focus on is a level of inspections that are provided by licensed contractors that would verify that the mechanical systems are operational. So again, a focus on HVAC and then hot water. We often run into scenarios where the mechanical system may be close to failing or may be somewhat operational. And if we are able to be more proactive versus in the winter months when they're turning the boiler on, to be able to get a better understanding of its capacity, that's very helpful to us. Obviously, we want no fire code violations that are outstanding. And then the last bullet on there is that our goal is not to displace anybody due to not being registered. We want that to play out through the normal court process. So if a property is unable or unwilling to submit inspections, we would anticipate issuing a temporary 60-day registration, which would then allow the owner to work with BZS to come into compliance. But we do not foresee setting up a system that would require the vacation of a complex due to not having a registration completed. At the top of your presentation, Councilmember, you talked about 2 of the very large examples that we have had, which is Colonial Village and Sawyer Towers. I think that one of the things that happens at a lot of these complexes is that you have very aging infrastructure due to the lifespan of these properties. So for properties that meet some very specific criteria, over 20 units, are over 30 years, and have current or previous emergency code violations related to critical systems, since the last registration, obviously that will be a timeline that we will have to establish as we start implementing the transition. There will be a requirement to do all of the inspections that were referenced on the last slide, but then to also provide a remediation plan to address outstanding maintenance issues related to the code violations. And what we're trying to get to there is through the court process, that's often something that's negotiated with the city attorney and BZS as part of the enforcement process. What is your plan to bring this property up to code? What is your plan, if you're going to sell it, to ensure that it is going to be remediated in a way that will alleviate the nuisance? We're really starting to start that conversation much sooner before a court process. So at the time of registration, tell us what your intent is so that we have an understanding of how we need to address this property as we engage with it. And then the other component that we are discussing right now is when the registration would transfer from one owner to another. So again, for that category of properties that we just covered, oftentimes the maintenance becomes very deferred and burdensome in a way that it no longer becomes a financially viable property for an owner. And so rather than perhaps undertaking all of the repairs that are necessary, they choose to sell it while they can still generate some revenue off of it. And then you have a new owner who may come in and either doesn't know the conditions of the property or also does not have an intent to perhaps do the extent of repairs that is needed. So what we would be asking is, at the time that a registration is moving from one owner to another, that new owner is acknowledging that there are outstanding issues, providing a remediation plan, and then would also provide a property conditions report. This is something that would go over and above the inspections that just speak to the system operating, but speak more to the life of the system. So it's not only acknowledging that the HVAC is operational, but it is stating that based on its condition, they think there are X number of years of its operations being in good condition. That would then allow us to plan whether or not there needs to be a annual inspection schedule or check-ins periodically to see how the property is functioning and ensuring that it's operating safely, so that we don't get into a situation where we may have to do a much higher scale and costly intervention at the time that the systems completely fail. From an enforcement perspective, it's our goal to work within the enforcement mechanisms that already exist within the housing code. So if you are operating without a valid registration, which would be a registration in good standing, obviously if you are on the remediation plan, we would have a temporary registration option, perhaps a conditional registration if your remediation plan is going to take several years, but you are making steps in order to meet all of those things. And if you do not have one in good standing, we would be looking at utilizing the current infrastructure of civil penalties, which can be administrative fines, late fees, and then there is the potential for misdemeanor criminal charges that exist in the code as well. From a timeline perspective, as you mentioned at the beginning, council member, it's our goal to continue to gain stakeholder feedback and then begin the process of actually writing the code and legislation for stakeholders to review, us to finalize and introduce for city council consideration at the end of October or early November. We would then have a second public hearing, and then we would hope to have city council consideration for a vote in November and or December, with implementation towards the second half of June of 2026. And that is all I have.
Thank you, Deputy Director Jones, and I think there will be many questions from my colleagues that will help, I think, go deeper into some of those. One, I just want to have a clarifying question as a baseline for us, Deputy City Attorney Baker Morris. You know, based on current case law and Ohio Revised Code, municipalities have the ability to establish a rental registry. Is that correct? I mean, so we're not talking about if this can be done legally or not. I know that that's been some things that have come up in our engagement, but based off of case law, we know that this can actually be done. Is that correct?
Yes, it can. Of course, the devil's going to be in the details, and we'll make sure that as we work with the departments to assure that if there are any issues or concerns, that we'll work through them. But yes, yes, we do.
Thank you. And I know the big sticking point for us when we, I think, first announced this and worked through it was around this idea of charging a fee. I think based off of case law, we know that we can charge a fee, but I think what has held us up in behind the scenes and working on things is what that fee can actually be used for. So can you put a little color on your interpretation of that specific piece of it?
Sure, Councilmember. So municipal governments are able to charge a fee if we are providing a particular service. And so those fees need to be commensurate with the service that we are providing. So for instance, we can use fees that we collect in order to provide the resources that are necessary to maintain the registry, or to conduct the inspections, or to go back and engage in litigation if necessary. So in other words, things that are related to the maintenance of the registry that we are asking individuals to pay the fee in order to be included upon, we can use those fees to offset those costs.
Got you. Thank you for that clarification. So I just wanted to set that as a baseline that, we have legal precedent here. There are a couple of things from the presentation, Deputy Director Jones or Director Messer, that you could address. One of them in particular is this transfer piece. I think there was some things that got back to our office that I think there was a misrepresentation that this does not preclude the actual sale of a property. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. It would not at all be us getting involved in the sale. The transfer component, and perhaps it's the language, so I apologize. Obviously, when a property is owned by one individual, the registration will be in the name of that owner. So after the purchase, that registration, for lack of a better word, is going to have to be transferred to the new owner. So at that time, with the new owner and that registration, we would be asking the same questions of the new owner. In order to ensure that the property is not just going to be transferred to somebody who may not be aware or as engaged as we would like in ensuring that the property stays up to code.
Thank you for that, because I just want to clarify that that this is not us getting into the affairs of the transfer and the sale of property. That is not what this is about. This is about the transfer of the actual registry. I think the spirit of this proposal, from what I'm hearing, is really about making sure that folks understand the condition of the property that they are receiving, inheriting, and that they have a plan to bring it up to code to ensure that we don't get into these cycles where it just bounces from one LLC to the other LLC, where we have a series of code violations and even sometimes cases, court pending cases, that vanish because it's transferred to a different LLC. So I just want to be very, very clear on what our intent and purpose is there, just to clear up the record. And additionally, I think from an enforcement standpoint, and Director Messer, you can, I think, probably speak to this more, our goal here is compliance. It is not to be punitive or, I think, to punish people, but I think it is about compliance. So I guess talk to us in a world, what does that look like with your team, and how do we abate, I think, problem properties when we do run into them?
Sure. Thank you. Yes, that is absolutely correct. I mean, we are hopeful that this registry will give us another tool in the toolbox to be able to, work with property owners and hold them accountable for the conditions of their property. I mean, one of the challenges we have right now is I manage the code enforcement division, and unfortunately, vacating property is one of the main tools that we would have that we don't like to use. We would much prefer to have the registry in place to provide the local contact and the advance notice of the conditions of property so we can work with landlords so that we don't find ourselves in a position where, because units don't have heat and it's going to be below zero, we have to vacate residents. Unfortunately, I don't have the ability to fix the heater. I don't have the ability, it's on the landlord to do those repairs. And so my only tool at this point is to vacate properties, which we don't want to do. So hopefully this registry will allow us to have information and the ability to partner with landlords to address these difficult situations before it gets to that point.
Thank you for that. And I use a scenario, so, right, for instance, if we know that something is at its lifespan, right, there are, I think, programs and other initiatives, whether it be with the city or other agencies that can help with replacement of those parts or can aid and help with that. And if we know that beforehand, we can get to prevent vacating a place. Because what we're talking about when we are talking about vacating someone because of health and safety reasons, that's a couple things that are happening. One, we're displacing a family, whether that be indefinitely, or maybe that problem gets fixed and they do actually get to go back to their place, or short term, and putting pressure on our already stressed shelter system. And then the third thing that we are now doing is putting that family into a housing market that is extremely competitive. One, because of our lack of supply, because of, when we talk about this, and I think one of the folks that is watching talked about that we don't have a shortage of housing, we just have rents that are too high. Well, the rents are too high because of the shortage of housing, right? It's a supply and demand issue. If you have more folks who are demanding something, the price of that commodity goes up, right? And so we do have a shortage. Then also, of course, the cost of construction is what makes new construction that is coming online too high. So there's a combination of things there. So I just want folks to understand that the goal is how do we keep people in their home? I think the last number that I just saw is that for every dollar we spend to keep someone in their home, we save $4 on, city services. And right now, the average of someone who goes into homelessness, goes through the shelter system, gets rehoused, is roughly $15,000. Think about that everyone is shouldering, right? And so I think that is really what we want to try to get to. So I thank you for talking about the enforcement piece and the compliance piece. We have to understand that there is carrots and sticks to everything. The idea is not to get to the stick first. The goal here is, again, to work with us so that we can prevent, I think, these types of scenarios. Deputy Director Jones, based on the research that you have done, your team has done, I think, a lot of it. We've been talking about this for a long time. Can you provide some examples of cities that run rental registries operating throughout the state of Ohio? And I know it varies, but there's some right here in our backyard, I believe, that also have this. Is that correct?
Yes, and before I answer that, I do want to tag right on the end of what you were saying previously and what the director was saying. Part of the reason we're here together is because there is an acknowledgement that landlords and property owners may need to make renovations, they may need to do changes, they may be in a situation where they do decide not to renew leases. And so this also allows us an opportunity to bring in the Division of Housing Stability and others to provide tenant resources and to engage with tenants and landlords on the front end. So I do want to point out that we do recognize that in some scenarios, it may make sense that a property does need to be vacated for a renovation or changed over ownership. We don't necessarily want to prevent that, but how do we bring the carrots as well to try and help stabilize the families? So with regard to what is in our community, yes, there's over 50 cities within the state of Ohio that do have rental registries. Gahanna and Reynoldsburg both have them locally. Peer cities, we've got Cleveland, Cincinnati, Youngstown, North Canton, Shaker Heights that all have them. Many of them have local agent requirements, and a majority of them have inspection requirements of some level, depending on the municipality as well.
Thank you. And I get, look, we're going to do things the Columbus way, and we're doing this our way. But I asked that question to point out this is not some novel thing that doesn't exist. I understand and I hear this idea of duplicity that happens, right? Because our county does have a registry. But even in the state of Ohio, there's precedents already that this exists. And that's just simply by the nature of, go ahead, I'm sorry.
No,
I think that's just simply by the nature of the limitations that our registry has at the county level because it's governed by the ORC. And I think we're going to hear later from our auditor's office. I'm going to open it up for my colleagues. This is not Congress where we all get like a certain number of minutes allocated, so I don't want to like commandeer the time. I got my colleagues here too, so I'm going to let them jump in if they have any questions. Councilmember White, don't fight now. No fighting up here.
Okay.
Councilmember Beatty.
And I'll yield the remainder of my time to the good councilman from the other district. The one thing that I don't see in this particular presentation, and I'm sure you've thought of it, is there any public-facing element of this information? For instance, you collect the information, would potential tenants be able to see this information? And I want to draw out a couple analogies here. Okay, if I'm wondering about if a business is legitimate that I'm getting ready to do business with, I can look at the Secretary of State's website. Any member can go on there and search a business, and then there's a person they can contact. I'm walking down the hall in the building. I can check the tag of the fire extinguisher and know that it's been checked. I'm working at a factory or at Walmart. I can go in the break room. I can see the workers' comp certificate. They've paid their workers' comp, so if I fall down and get hurt, I'm already paid for. So my question is, if we go through all this, and we're going to assume that there's going to be some folks that aren't compliant, hopefully all of them are, will there be a mechanism that potential tenants or folks that are living in these buildings can look and know that their potential place they're going to live or the potential place their child is going to live is fully registered and complying?
Councilmember, thanks for that question. It's a great question, and the answer is yes. There's really going to be three key components from a data technology standpoint with this registry. One is to leverage technology to make it as easy as possible for folks to actually register, to be able to do those systems online, to be able to pay online, to be able to do things with the use of technology. Number two is to have a public-facing component that technology now allows folks to see if people are in good standing, when was their last registry, what are the results of the inspections. Whatever we do in the registry, we intend to make as public facing as possible. And then number three, we're also excited about the opportunity to leverage that technology to actually link this registry with other registries and other GIS type applications that we have around the city, with the vision of at some point people in the public being able to go to a map, click on a property, not only find out is it registered under the rental registry, but are there outstanding permits or outstanding code orders? Are there other city technology things that we could add to the mix that allows our residents to fully gather as much information as they can about a particular property? So we're excited. I know that's a little bit down the road, but it is fully our intention to use the data that we're getting from this registry in the most robust ways possible.
Thank you. That's all I have for right now.
Thank you, Councilmember. And I think to that point, it could also even be a tool, I think, that helps our housing providers. I think, tenants who are looking for a good place, right, have money to spend, and they're trying to, find a good place to go. So I think it could actually be a tool that helps our housing providers. Councilmember White.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and thank you, Deputy Director, for kind of going through the presentation. To kind of piggyback off Councilmember Beatty's question in terms of data and presenting out there, the registry requirements that you have listed, do you envision that as something that is written into code or administrative process? Meaning, can you change things if you find that you need additional data on other elements to the housing that we have?
Yeah, thanks, Councilmember. We'll be working with the city attorney pretty regularly to digest and determine what really needs to go into code versus what we typically have are rules and regulations that implement that code. And so I don't have a clear-cut answer for you yet as to what goes into the code and what doesn't go into the code. But there are definitely going to be key elements that will need to be codified in the actual code itself. And then whatever we can be flexible on to be a rule and reg, those will be easier to change as we implement the program.
Thank you, that's helpful.
But I would just add, we recognize that this is a new thing that we're launching. We're trying to get as much input and feedback as we can. But just like a lot of other code changes and initiatives, we're going to recognize that there might need to be an opportunity to revisit this once we implement it. And whether it requires a code change or a simple change of rule and reg, we're committed to make it work as good as it can.
Thank you, that's helpful. I mean, selfishly, as the Chair of Public Utilities and Sustainability, one of the things that would be helpful in terms of data out there is recycling, and simply, is that being provided on site or not? And so I would love to see that information in the registry requirements in terms of just a click, yes or no, it is either on site or it's not. An additional question, and really because of the work that we have done with the disability community, is better understanding of accessible housing that we have in the city of Columbus. Has that been something that has been considered, or at least an option to also recognize where accessible housing is in the city of Columbus?
Yes, Councilmember, we have had those conversations on both of those topics as well as other possible information type gathering things that are just clicks or maybe boxes that landlords can check that gives us kind of the information. And I think, just the fact alone that we're not even sure exactly how many rental units we have in the city of Columbus. I mean, we have estimates as many as 200,000 units in the city. One of the key things is that we're looking for is through this registry is to actually know how many and where these rental units are. And some of the information that you just mentioned are going to be some excellent opportunities for us to maybe at least understand the scope and scale of other issues and other data opportunities as we go forward.
Thank you, that's helpful. And just my last question is the 4-unit decision. Can you just speak to how you all came up with that number? Is that just kind of a standard for multi-unit buildings that we have, or is there a specific reason why we went with 4?
Yeah, so it really is both in terms of just a size component, but it's also linked to code. So 1, 2, and 3 families in the state of Ohio are considered to be residential properties. When you move to 4 families and above, it's more of a commercial operation, and so that's why we make that distinction.
Thank you, Director Messer. I know that it's, I think it's hard right now for us to define the amount of revenue that this would raise, but I just want to clarify, right? This is not a money grab for us. I mean, I think that this idea that this is going to raise $12 million or cover other expenses in the city, one, legally, we just can't do that. But 2, can you just talk about the fee structure, how we came up with that? Again, your thoughts around what those fees will be used for, and then if you can opine on what that range or amount would possibly be, and how that would help us administer the program.
Sure. I can tell you that we are implementing this under the advice and information that we're receiving from the city attorney. And as she mentioned, the intention is to use the fees to implement the program and implement the sort of associated programs and efforts that need to go along to both implement the information gathering, the technology, the staffing involved, the enforcement, and other ancillary programs. And so this money will not go into the city's general fund, so to speak. It'll come into building and zoning services, and we will use the funds to implement the program and ancillary things connected with it. The math is there. I mean, if we charge $40 a unit, most cities, their compliance rate depends, but even if you got a compliance rate of 50%, the math would tell you might get, a few $1,000,000 out of this. And like I said, by the time we hire the staff, implement the program, and do the ancillary things around that, we're not really looking to make a lot of money off of this at all.
Thank you. And I just wanted to make sure I clarified that this is not a boatload of money that is going to be generated, right? $12 million or anywhere north of that is just not even in the calculations that we're seeing. So I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you for that. I think there will be more questions. Before we move on, any other additional questions from my colleagues? So I want to get into some invited speakers that we have to really talk around this issue. As I said, we've been engaging with several different stakeholders, and want to make sure that we give them the opportunity and space, and then we will get to public comment. So first up, we have Ms. Melissa Benson. She's the Senior Managing Attorney for Legal Aid of Southeast and Central Ohio. Good to see you.
Hello. Chair Bankston, members of council, thank you for the invitation to come and speak this evening and share some of the experiences of legal aid's clients in this, in the realm of rental housing. As the senior managing attorney for the housing team, I supervise a number of attorneys representing tenants in order to prevent evictions, preserve housing subsidies, enforce fair housing rights, and ensure that the homes that tenants rent are safe to live in. Unsafe housing conditions result in tenant displacement with or without eviction filings. Legal Aid's Housing Conditions Project helps tenants to request repairs to their home and to escrow their rent or to break their lease if those repairs are not made. More often than not, the repairs are not made when we send repair request letters. When the repairs are made, they are sometimes inadequate to completely remedy the unsafe housing conditions. More often than not, tenants choose to move from their homes when their landlords do not make those requested repairs. And when a new tenant moves in, they are faced with the same poor housing conditions. Tenants can enforce their right to repairs by escrowing their rent. And under Ohio law, the first step to doing this is to send a letter to the landlord requesting those repairs in writing. Oftentimes, tenants facing unsafe living conditions do not know who to contact to request repairs. A large portion of Columbus residential rental property is owned by out-of-state investors and corporations. Sometimes these investors have listed their rental contact information on the county auditor's site, but often they have not. When there is a reachable local contact, tenants sometimes report to legal aid that they have been told the contact doesn't have the authority to make repairs or the funds to do it from the owner. When tenants contact legal aid for help getting repairs, our paralegal will spend time searching public records to determine who is responsible for maintaining the property. Oftentimes, we help tenants send repair letters to out-of-state companies who do not respond. It should not take special knowledge and training and the knowledge of how to search public records in order for a tenant to be able to identify the person they need to contact in order to request repairs for their home. Having access to that basic information is crucial to living in a safe home. When we speak with tenants facing bad housing conditions, many are afraid to contact code enforcement or to send repair requests to their landlords. While the City of Columbus has criminalized retaliation and Ohio landlord-tenant law prohibits retaliation by landlords when a tenant requests repairs to make their home safe and livable, if the landlord can offer a facially justifiable reason for terminating the tenancy, it is very difficult to prove that retaliation has occurred and prevent an eviction. This means tenants who do not have the protections of a written lease could face termination of their month-to-month tenancy for requesting repairs. Tenants lucky enough to have written leases may see that lease non-renewed at its expiration. Sometimes the pet that a landlord has known about for years suddenly becomes a lease violation, leading to an eviction filing. Or hundreds of dollars in previously unenforced late fees abruptly appear on a tenant's ledger. Even if we are able to successfully defeat a retaliatory eviction, the record of that eviction would still remain, making it difficult for those tenants to find new housing. When we speak to tenants about requesting repairs, we have an obligation as their attorneys to advise them of these risks when they are trying to make a decision about whether to request those repairs. Legal aid receives hundreds of calls from tenants facing unsafe rental conditions every year. Some of those examples are dramatic. For example, everyone here is aware of the Latitude 525 evacuation on Christmas Day in 2022. For most of 2022, legal aid received complaints about bad housing conditions at the Latitude 525 complex. Lack of hot water, and pest infestations were the most common complaints. In July of that year, the elevators in one of Latitude's two 15-story towers went down for several weeks, trapping many elderly and disabled tenants inside. The Columbus Fire Department was called to evacuate at least one tenant because of a medical emergency. Despite this, the tenants were hesitant to call code. Even with an environmental case pending through the city attorney's office, many tenants were not requesting inspections. Though hundreds of families lived with these conditions, only a handful of them sought help from legal aid or from the city. This is in part because Latitude 525 was housing of last resort. If tenants had another place to go, they had already left. Many tenants who remained had no other options and were afraid that if they contacted code, their landlords would terminate their tenancies. On Christmas Eve in 2022, we learned from one of our clients that there was water pouring out of the ceiling in the common areas of the building from broken pipes. A severe cold snap had dropped temperatures well below freezing, and the frozen pipes had burst throughout the building. Columbus Code and fire officials were on site attempting to address that issue promptly. I even contacted the local attorney for the complex so that he could contact his client and make sure that the issues were addressed. As we all know, the issues were not addressed. A series of open windows in vacant units throughout the complex were not closed, despite code notifying property management that this would help the situation. More pipes froze and burst, and ultimately on Christmas morning, hundreds of tenants were evacuated from their homes, never to return. Latitude 525 had been purchased by a New Jersey corporation just 14 months earlier, in October of 2021, the same company that purchased Colonial Village. At the time the property was purchased, many of the essential systems were already in disrepair. Rather than making needed repairs, owners ignored them and they grew progressively worse. The city had no ability to ascertain how serious the situation was until it was too late. Had the proposed rental registry been in place at the time of that sale, the city could have gained valuable information about the conditions of the building that would have allowed them to intervene and perhaps preserve that housing. But it is not only the tenants of large complexes who struggle with unsafe housing conditions. Since Latitude 525 was evacuated in late 2022, Legal Aid has received more than 1,000 calls from Columbus area tenants living in unsafe housing conditions and trying to get their landlords to make repairs. We also see hundreds of tenants in eviction court paying rents they cannot afford to live in homes with multiple code violations. Irene was one of those tenants. She came to Legal Aid seeking assistance when her landlord filed an eviction against her. While the eviction case was pending, Irene was vacated from her home by Columbus City Code Enforcement because there was no running water. Irene had been homeless before moving into this single-family home with the support of rental assistance from a local social service agency. Severe water damage had deteriorated the floors in the living room and kitchen. There were holes in the ceiling. Neither the stove nor the refrigerator worked. The kitchen cabinets were not installed and were sitting on the floor. The kitchen sink was leaking, the house lacked smoke detectors, and the basement stairs were unable to bear the weight of a person walking down them and were unsafe to use. Despite all of these issues, Irene moved into this home because the alternative was having no home at all. Prior to the eviction filing, she had been afraid to contact code enforcement because she could not afford to move somewhere else. As council well knows, there's a significant shortage of affordable housing in our community. At present, we do not know how many rental units are available in Columbus, nor do we know the condition of those units. Low-income renters are being priced out of safe rentals, and where there is more demand for housing than supply, landlords do not have a financial incentive to make repairs to their property before re-renting. If tenant A doesn't like it, they can leave or be evicted, and tenant B will move in despite the lack of repairs, because for too many in our community, a leaking roof is better than no roof at all. Tenants should not bear the sole responsibility for holding landlords accountable to their statutory obligations to keep the properties they rent fit and habitable. Poor housing conditions cause harm to, not only to the residents of that home, but to the neighbors and to the community as a whole. Rental registries with inspection components improve the quality of rental housing in the community. For example, between 2008 and 2013, Sacramento, California's rental housing inspection program estimated that it reduced dangerous housing condition building cases by 22%, based on a declining share of code violations each year since the program's inspection. In 1998, Los Angeles established a systemic code enforcement program, and 7 years later, more than 90% of the city's multifamily housing stock had been inspected, with more than 1.5 million habitability violations corrected, resulting in approximately $1.3 billion in reinvestment in the city's housing stock by the owners of that housing. Columbus is in dire need for reinvestment in its housing stock. As Columbus' affordable housing stock ages, many rental units do not meet Columbus Housing Code standards. Unsafe housing stock negatively affects not only the tenants in those homes, but their neighbors and the community at large. Tenants with limited options and limited income bear the burden of enforcing their rights to repairs despite a significant power imbalance between them and the rental housing industry. This proposed registry seeks to address this imbalance by identifying rental units, ensuring local contacts for tenants to raise concerns to, and ensuring that residential rentals meet minimum standards for safety for their residents. I'm happy to answer any questions that you all may have.
Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Benson, and for all the work you're doing on the front lines. Your team sees this every single day. And I just want to lift that we are talking about the worst of the worst case scenarios, and that this registry, and as I think all the things that we've done around our Housing for All 2.0 package, is not about penalizing good landlords, but it's these stories that are real stories that we have to address. And so I want to thank you and your team for doing that every single day down at our courthouse. Any questions from my colleagues? Thank you again for being here.
Thank you very much.
Next, we have Joe Gilligan, who's the Director of Policy and Special Initiatives for the Office of the Franklin County Auditor, Michael Stenziano. And Joe, you can either stay in your seat there, that microphone works, or you can come up here to the podium. Good to see you.
Great to see you, Councilmember and Councilmember Beatty and Councilmember Weiss. Thank you for the opportunity to provide testimony regarding the City of Columbus's proposed rental registry ordinance. I am Joe Gilligan. I am the Director of Policy and Special Initiatives in the Office of Franklin County Auditor Michael Stenziano, who could not be here tonight, so I am going to read his testimony that he prepared for today's hearing. As you may know, under ORC 5323.02, the Franklin County Auditor's Office is required to administer a countywide rental registry, which collects data on residential rental properties throughout the county. While this registry provides valuable information on rental property ownership and contact details, due to how the statute is constructed, it has limited enforcement authority and minimal penalties for noncompliance. As a result of these shortcomings, it is difficult to ensure adequate participation, which undermines the registry's effectiveness for the county. The City of Columbus's proposed rental registry ordinance offers complementary support to the county registry by establishing local authority for oversight, including proactive inspections, tenant communication channels, and stronger enforcement mechanisms. It is important to emphasize that the flexibility to create these requirements and collect this level of information is not allowed for auditors' offices under ORC 5323.02. The city's proposal addresses gaps that the county is not legally permitted to fill. Key provisions, such as requiring designation of local agents and emergency maintenance contacts, pre-sale inspections for properties with histories of code violations, and limiting inspections to emergency life safety concerns reflect best practices already adopted in Cincinnati and Cleveland. These types of measures have shown to help prevent tenant displacement and ensure rental housing in communities remains safe and affordable. To strengthen the city's proposal further, several recommendations based on additional successful practices that would be beneficial to include are: require proof of current property tax payment or evidence of a payment plan in good standing with Franklin County prior to registration approval. This encourages responsible property ownership and supports local tax collection efforts. This is required by the City of Cleveland. Require submission of proof that an LLC is registered and in good standing with the Ohio Secretary of State to enhance ownership transparency. This is required by the City of Cleveland. Collect data on average rents by unit size and type to improve rental market transparency. This is required by the City of Cincinnati. Ensure third-party licensed inspectors conducting Tier 2 and Tier 3 inspections have no direct relationship with property owners or management companies. Implement penalties for repeated or continued noncompliance and prioritize enforcement efforts toward investor-owned and frequently non-compliant properties. Establish a tenant portal for complaints and communication with the registry administrator to improve tenant engagement and oversight. This is required by the City of Cincinnati. Similar to trends across Ohio, Franklin County has witnessed an increase in investor-owned rental properties, which are often linked to code violations, property neglect, and tenant displacement. We know from our own rental registry data that most property owners who fail to comply year after year with the county rental registry requirements are investors. The fines and potential for civil and criminal penalties proposed by the city certainly create incentives for registry compliance for these ownership entities that the county registry cannot. The City of Columbus Rental Registry provides a necessary mechanism to hold these property owners accountable, enhance safety, and protect housing affordability. Additionally, the creation of a city-level rental registry presents a valuable opportunity for ongoing collaboration and data sharing between the City of Columbus and the Franklin County Auditor's Office. Improved data integration will not only contribute to a more transparent and tenant-friendly housing market, but also enhance the accuracy of property assessments for rental housing across the city. Thank you for your leadership on this issue. I and members of the Franklin County Auditor's Office look forward to continued partnership with the City of Columbus to ensure safe, affordable, and well-managed rental housing throughout the city. Sincerely, Michael Stenziano, Franklin County Auditor.
Thank you, Joe, and for, I think, the auditors, I think, support. I know he's worked with our next speaker coming up quite closely. And again, just want to reiterate that this is not about duplication. This is about better compliance. Our Franklin County Auditor doesn't have a code enforcement team, doesn't have a city attorney, doesn't have the ability to issue fines and fees and all of that for compliance. It's basically voluntary, right? And so if you don't know, then you don't know, and the fine is $150. And so I just want to thank the auditor for speaking in support and being a partner with us. And I will say this on the record as well, is that what we are looking into is to try to figure out if it's applicable by the ORC, that the information that we receive that we can give to our friends at the county so that it can strengthen your registry as well. So I just wanted to, again, thank you for being here today. And again, please thank Auditor Stenziano for his testimony and support. Any questions or comments from my colleagues? All right, thank you again. And next, as I alluded to, Ms. Kathy Levine. She is the steering committee member for the Rental Registry Committee for BREAD. She is here with me. And they got a whole entire committee around this, so I'm looking forward to your testimony, Kathy. Good to see you again.
Good to see you. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Kathy Levine. I'm a member of Congregation Tefereth Israel, and I'm here speaking on behalf of BREAD, Building Responsibility, Equality, and Dignity, a Columbus area organization of 40 diverse faith congregations that builds people power to hold public officials accountable to implement proven solutions to serious community problems. Today, we're here to say a big thank you to Councilmember Nick Bankston for honoring your commitment to BREAD's thousands of members by preparing to introduce legislation creating a rental registry with a system of regular inspections in Columbus, and to others in city government who have worked so hard to get us this far. Almost 2 years ago, BREAD heard from our members stories of renters who lived in unsafe conditions because landlords would not make necessary repairs. In some cases, as you heard from Melissa Benson, renters were unable to find anyone in charge to make repairs, especially with the surge in out-of-state landlords. We also learned during our research process that many Columbus renters were afraid to call code enforcement for fear of retaliation in the form of increased rent, eviction, termination, or even an emergency vacate order, largely because of the huge shortage of affordable housing. Our research revealed that many cities in Ohio and around the country had formed rental registries, often with a system of proactive inspections to ensure that renters had safe housing and that rental properties were being kept in good condition. We met with local and national agencies with expertise on rental registries and learned that a rental registry alone does not hold landlords accountable for safe rental properties. Inspections do. Regular, proactive inspections, that is not generated by a complaint, takes the burden off renters to complain about unsafe conditions. Based on our research, we developed a checklist and recommendations which for the most part, are reflected in the proposal before us. In addition to protecting renters from unsafe living conditions, the rental registry serves two other purposes, so important to Columbus as we grow. The rental registry helps the Department of Building and Zoning to inventory our rental housing stock so we know what we have and what more we need. Second, given our huge shortage of rental housing, we need to keep the housing we have in good condition. The registry, with its inspection component, coaxes landlords into keeping housing in good condition rather than letting it fall deeper into disrepair until it's not salvageable. Think Colonial Village and Latitude 525. We're preventing problems and preserving housing. The enforcement section, while sparse on details, provides the Department of Building and Zoning and city attorneys with the tools they need to encourage compliance with graduated monetary penalties and civil citations, using tougher tools only when the situation warrants it. We in Bread, for the most part, are very pleased with the current proposal. We're pleased that registration and compliance with inspections are designed to be easy for landlords, with low registration fees and the ability to comply with inspection requirements without delays in renting out properties. We applaud the three-tiered system designed to ensure that properties comply with key safety provisions of the City of Columbus Housing Code. Not to sound like a 13-year-old's bat mitzvah speech, but I have many people to thank for getting us to where we are today. We applaud former City Council member Shayla Favor and other council members for the Housing for All package of legislation that has created new protections into which the rental registry will be integrated. Thank you, President Hardin, for your leadership on this and other housing issues. We want to thank Department of Building and Zoning Director Scott Messer for his commitment to setting up and operating the registry, and especially to Hannah Jones, who, from our standpoint, did most of the tough stuff. Thanks to aides J.P. Dorval and Jonathan Smith for scheduling and communications mastery. Thanks to all of City Council for supporting this proposal, and again, thanks to Councilmember Bankston for honoring your commitment to protecting renters. And I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, and I'll say thank you, Ms. Kathy, for your continued advocacy and partnership on this. And I don't mix my words, and I'll say it again. Housing is a human right, not just simply a commodity.
Yes.
And it takes housing providers, it takes developers to develop that housing. It takes landlords and folks willing to rent that property. It takes a whole entire ecosystem to make that happen. But at the end of the day, housing is a human right. And so if you are in this space of housing, it comes with an increased responsibility because we are providing a human right to our fellow humans, to our fellow neighbors. And that is tough because not all tenants are the best tenants, not all landlords are the best landlords, but we are all in this together. And so I think any steps that we can be taken to ensure that if you're going to be providing housing, it comes with regulation. It comes with increased standards because you are providing a human right to people, not just simply a commodity. And so as long as I sit in this seat, I will unapologetically fight first and foremost for the residents of Columbus. And I say that as the small business chair because I understand the balance that we have to have. But we have to ensure that where these folks are living is safe, it is healthy, it is dignified. And if we're already doing these things, as I've heard from so many folks, then let's step up and show that. And we can do that together. So I wanted to say thank you for that. I also want to say thank you to the folks at Bread for continuing to push. And I made it clear to everyone, probably when we get to the end of this, not everyone's going to get everything. But I can tell you clearly that we are going to have a rental registry that is going to work for Columbus, and it is going to work to make the conditions of housing better and safer. And it is going to work for us as a city to be able to strategically invest the limited resources that we have because the federal government is not coming to save us. The state house is not coming to save us. And so it is going to be incumbent more than ever on local government, for us as local agents to chart our own future. So again, thank you for your advocacy. And Mr. Brown and Mr. Dorval are always going to be here to coordinate for you. So thank you again. Any questions for Ms. Levine? Okay, thank you again.
Thank you.
Next we have Director Dilna Kama and Rochelle Toth, and if I mispronounce that, please let me know. With and this is academia right here, guys. Watch this. The Willie J. Young Senior Off-Campus and Commuter Student Engagement Office at The Ohio State University. And I knew Mr. Willie Young, so so honored to see that his name has been honored with this. He was a giant at Ohio State when I was there, and just a great person. So anyway, I'll turn it over to you.
I agree. My biggest mentor my whole career, so thank you. So thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Dilna Kama. I do have my colleague Rochelle Toth in the room as well, and we are here representing The Ohio State University. So our team works closely with thousands of students who rent housing both in the university district area as well as the surrounding Columbus neighborhoods. We also work closely with many different landlords in our community. And we really serve as that bridge between students, property owners, community members, and our city to promote a safe community and housing that is supportive of our student success. We strongly support the creation of a rental registry. It fills a critical gap, provides proactive tools to prevent avoidable hazards, and improves rental housing quality, safety, and accountability. Some of these are challenges we see firsthand in our work with students and citizens in our community. The registry will provide tools for students and families to make an educated, knowledgeable decision on where they want to live, and also puts measures in place to support tenants if a situation should occur. Students are often first-time renters, unfamiliar with navigating landlord-tenant laws, or even identifying who truly manages their housing. Having a registry with verified points of contact makes it easier for us to support them when those challenges arise. The registry strengthens Ohio State's ability to be a true partner with the city in addressing neighborhood concerns and ensuring off-campus housing supports students' academic success. With reliable ownership and contact information, our team can collaborate more effectively with our property owners as well as the city to resolve issues before they escalate. It also enables us to better educate students on their rights and responsibilities as tenants because we can direct them to accurate and transparent property owner information. Ultimately, this registry empowers us to help students maintain a positive quality of life while living off campus, which directly contributes to their ability to focus on and succeed in their academic pursuits. Next, I want to provide a couple examples just from the last few weeks that highlight why this tool is urgently needed. The first example, we unfortunately had a student that was critically injured in a car accident. Their family and our team tried to contact the property owner to discuss releasing them from their lease, but it was extremely difficult to identify and reach the correct owner. A registry would have streamlined that process in a critical moment of need. Another example, we became aware of plans for a large party/concert where there were anticipated more than 1,500 individuals at an off-campus rental property in our neighborhoods. This event obviously raised major safety concerns, but it was challenging to determine who owned the property because the LLC was not clearly tied to a known local company. Having a designated local contact through the registry would allow us and the city to quickly engage with the responsible parties to ensure safety as well as compliance. Finally, I want to provide an example that highlights the importance of the safety inspections piece that would be included as part of the registry. We've seen safety situations that could have potentially been mitigated through proactive safety inspections. So the example I'm going to give you is very intentional. We had tenants doing something they should not be doing, and that's critical to the piece of this story. We had students on a roof of a rental property when the roof collapsed. Fortunately, no one was physically injured, but it was a traumatic incident that could have had much more serious consequences, as it has in other communities. A proactive inspection might have identified structural weaknesses ahead of time, allowing issues to be addressed before those tenants were put at risk. While we recognize that this particular activity, being on the roof, is prohibited for tenants, the incident underscores two critical points. One, safety accountability. Property owners have a responsibility to ensure the properties are structurally sound and safe for occupancy. And two, tenant accountability. A registry would provide a clear line of communication with property owners. If illegal or unsafe activities are observed, the university or the city could work directly with that owner so they can intervene, they can educate their tenants and hold them accountable for behaviors that violate laws or city ordinances. This example illustrates how a rental registry not only improves safety oversight, but also strengthens partnerships between property owners, the city, and the university to create safer living environments for students as well as our broader community. The proposed rental registry closes significant gaps in our current system, shifting from reactive, complaint-based enforcement to proactive safety and accountability. It aligns Columbus with best practices used in other Ohio cities while protecting both our tenants as well as our property owners. For us at Ohio State, it strengthens our ability to partner with the city in supporting students and having a safe, stable housing environment that supports their academic and personal well-being. We urge council to support this important program. Thank you.
Thank you, Director, and thank you, a very unique population that you are dealing with, what I say is the future of our city. So thank you for all that you all do there on campus. Any questions, Councilmember Brady? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And then last but not least, we have Mary Muteg. There we go. Director of Compass. And then after Ms. Mary, we will go into public comment and testimony. So we're almost there, folks. So I appreciate you bearing with us.
Thank you. My name is Mary Mutegi. I serve as the director for Campus, a neighborhood ministry of Broad Street Presbyterian Church, and a proud partner supporting the Columbus community. I'm honored to be here this evening to share with you the vital work we are doing in housing stabilization. First, let me begin by expressing our deep gratitude to the City of Columbus for the financial support and the long-standing partnership with Campus. Thank you for your investment. We've been able to stretch that every dollar we received into $4 of direct financial assistance for our neighbors in need. For over 40 years, Campus has stood with Columbus residents facing housing crisis. With a small but dedicated team of 5, we provide rental and utility assistance to roughly 1,500 households every year. Many of these people come from zip codes that are hardest hit by evictions. That's 43224, 232, 203, and 43213. We are proud for the ongoing collaboration with the city's Department of Development, Code Enforcement, and the Columbus Public Health Department. Together, we've tackled some of the most urgent housing crises in this city, such as the mass evictions or emergency relocation support. We've responded to several mass displacements due to code violations, and properties such as Wedgwood Village, the Sawyer Towers, or otherwise called Latitude 525, Colonial Village, the Live at Edgewater Landing, and other private properties. In these emergencies, Campus has helped with relocating displaced residents into hotels. Imagine, in 4 hours, we were able to locate 50 households into hotels, figuring who has children that have to go to school the following day. How far can you drive? Do you have transportation? Do you have food? Would coordinate transportation, food deliveries, cover storage, moving costs that for those people that had to move to new homes, also pay security deposits and fast rent for families moving into those new homes. But our work didn't stop at logistics. We met personally with residents in hotels and community centers, helping them complete apartment applications, advocate with landlords, and navigate language barriers, particularly for the hundreds of Haitian residents that were displaced from the Colonial Village apartments. These efforts were made possible through close collaborations with some valued partners. Some of them are here today: the Community Shelter Board, R.H. Brown and Company, the Legal Aid of Southern and Central Ohio, and Community Mediation Services. Another effort is the emergency rental assistance that recently ended this September. Since 2022, Campus has helped process rental payments for approximately 5,000 unduplicated program participants through the Emergency Rental Assistance Funds. However, during this process, we often encountered a recurring challenge of landlords and property managers who failed to respond or to own applications for rental assistance. This resulted to unnecessary evictions that were not only costly and destabilizing for tenants and the community, but are also financially detrimental to the landlords themselves. Sometimes we think if it just took 50 minutes to communicate with the right landlord or the property manager, if we had that registry, we could have prevented hours of crisis intervention for our staff and, more importantly, for the families that we serve. Why does the rental registry matter to Campus? It's a citywide rental registry would transform our work and the housing landscape in Columbus. It will allow us to directly reach the correct point of contact to approve rental assistance and swiftly resolve some of tenant concerns. It's also going to help us improve operational efficiencies and reduce the time spent tracking down property contacts. We could more efficiently advocate for tenants facing code violations and poor living conditions. The funds that are currently spent on those mass relocations could be redirected to long-term housing solutions. Most importantly, residents could see improvements in their quality of life, health, and safety. Council members, I urge you to support the implementation of a registry with a modest fee that could probably contribute to the homeless prevention efforts or perhaps in the emergency vacate situations. This is not a cost, but it's an investment for landlords. It's going to offer fewer evictions, reduced turnover, stable rental payments, and strong community ties. So we envision that with a small inflation-adjusted fee that can prevent evictions, keep families housed, and stabilize neighborhoods, it ensures that these cities' most vulnerable residents are not falling through the cracks and that landlords are not left holding the cost of instability. A stable community is a profitable community. So we thank you for your time, your partnership, and your commitment to a safer, stable, and stronger Columbus. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Director Mutegi. Appreciate your testimony. Any questions, Councilmember? All right, thank you.
Thank you so much.
We will now move into the public comment portion of this evening. I wanted to say, as of yesterday's 5 p.m. deadline, we did we have received 9 independent and unique written testimony submissions from Mr. George Yplantis, I may be butchering that, Lincoln Schneider, Wade Biglin, Peter Lomaine, Mike Primo, Executive Director of Community Development for All People, The Preserve at Canal Apartments, Jennifer Williams, Laura Swanson, and Dustin Holsky. And we also did receive several templated emails from F&W Properties. These submissions have been shared with all council offices and will be on the record with the city clerk. We also have received 10 requests for in-person testimony, so we'll have folks come at this time. Again, just to reiterate the rules here, 3 minutes. Please introduce yourself and the organization that you represent, and you have 3 minutes. First up will be Mr. Tom Albanese, followed by Jerry O'Neill, and then on deck we'll have Tamara Howard. So if you would come at that time, and all my folks that are Tom Albanese, there he is, and then, like I said, Jerry O'Neill and Tamara Howard, you guys are on deck. So if you're sitting up in the rafters, come on, make your way on down, because it's a long walk, and I don't have any walk-up music for you today.
Thank
Tom.
you, Council. Good to see you. Thank you for holding the hearing. Thank you and good evening. I apologize. I left my piece of paper in the car, so I'm reading off my phone my remarks tonight. Good evening. My name is Tom Albanese. I'm a longtime member of the Columbus community. Formerly worked at the Community Shelter Board for many years and have supported working with Ms. Nicholas and others to support the development of the local homelessness prevention efforts and network here in our community. I'm also proud to say I work with many partners around the table here presenting tonight to organize and coordinate the Central Ohio Stable Housing Network, which is a loose affiliation of organizations working together to address housing instability. Across the country, I am fortunate to partner with communities to develop coordinated and efficient approaches that stabilize households and reduce the need for costly and traumatizing crisis responses like emergency shelter. As we heard earlier, situations like Irene's that result in literal homelessness because of unsafe or uninhabitable housing conditions are simply unacceptable. I'm here tonight in strong support of a rental registry ordinance for the City of Columbus. A well-designed registry is a fair and balanced tool. It ensures basic accountability and oversight and provides the city with accurate data on our rental housing stock and helps tenants and landlords alike by creating clear lines of communication and responsibility. It also strengthens code enforcement, accountability, improves neighborhood quality, and generates resources that can be reinvested back into rental assistance and housing stability. This is not a radical idea. We are long overdue to catch up to our peer communities in Ohio and around the U.S. Rental registry ordinances are increasingly commonplace, and yet Columbus, where 55% of households rent their housing, we remain without these common sense protections. For families and children in unsafe or unstable rental conditions, the consequences are directly harmful and traumatizing, with lifelong consequences, and costly to the entire community. As I said, we are overdue to join our peer communities and to take this important step. I encourage you to stand with your constituents, the majority of whom are renters, and adopt a registry that works for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for Tom, and thank you for your service, years of service with the Community Shelter Board. Next, we have Mr. Jerry O'Neill.
I'm a landlord, and I'm sorry the auditor's rep didn't stay, because Mike Stinziano has got the rental registry right now. And it's very easy. I've mentioned to him a couple times, he could hire a college student during the summer, go through all the LLCs, all the other kinds of stuff, and he can fine those out-of-state, whatever, landlords, $150 a piece. That will get the rental registry updated. Also, the fact that I think a court ruling in Ulrichsville, Ohio, in December of '24 said the rental registry fees adopted and collected were illegal and unconstitutional taxes. All of you how many of you are tenants? That's who's going to pay for this. I do inspections on my properties, and it's amazing. I can tell the tenant that I'm going to do an inspection in 3 days and remind them to put batteries in the smoke detectors, and I show up and half the smoke detectors don't have batteries. So there's a hell of a lot of responsibility for tenants out there to do something to improve their own lives when they could burn down the house, and I've had a few fires from that too. So I suggest that if you want to do something, yes, there's 10% of those slum landlords out there. Get after those guys. But don't put additional bureaucracy on the 90% of the landlords out there that are doing good housing, provide good housing, and all my tenants know where to call. Very simple. There's a lease, there's a name. I keep in touch with them every month when they owe me rent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. O'Neill, for your testimony, and thank you for being a responsible housing provider in our community. As I stated before, I think our goal is to help streamline this. Oh, no, I was just saying thank you for your testimony. I just wanted to thank you for being a responsible housing provider.
I work with them, they are great, but impact money is drying up. So there's going to be, you're going to have to get a hell of a lot more code enforcement out there than you currently have, and there's a lot more evictions on there just because tenants don't pay.
Yeah, thank you for that, and that is something that we are very aware of and want to make sure that we try to do what we can here at the local level. Ms. Tamara Howard.
Good evening.
I'm sorry, before you go, so I'm messing up myself. Then on deck, we have Don Bruner, and then also Mason Alexander after that. Sorry, Ms. Tamara.
Good evening, Chair Bankston and members of council. I'm Tamara Howard, and I serve as the Director of Advocacy at YWCA Columbus. We operate the YWCA Family Center, Franklin County's first family-only emergency shelter, which celebrates its 20th anniversary this October. In those 2 decades, more than 7,500 families have come through our doors in crisis, and we've learned a simple truth. Safe, stable rental housing prevents homelessness before it starts. That's why we strongly support creating a rental registry with proactive inspections, clear accountability, and an eye toward preserving affordability. Across the country, communities that move to proactive rental inspections see better housing conditions and tenant health, and a registry is the backbone that makes this possible. Inspections can also connect families to critical services. When inspectors identify hazards or families at risk of imminent displacement, Columbus agencies can provide rapid support, such as rental assistance, healthcare, and stabilization resources, often stopping eviction or homelessness before it starts. When officials know where at-risk families are living, targeted interventions can be deployed. That's prevention in action. For the YWCA Family Center, this matters. Families who arrive at the YWCA Family Center often list unsafe apartments, difficulty finding quality housing, and health challenges tied to poor rental conditions as drivers of their instability. Preventing even a fraction of those crises by addressing unsafe or deteriorating rentals upstream will keep children in school, parents at work, and costs down across our systems and community. A registry with proactive inspections will reduce the pipeline into family homelessness and help preserve affordable units that are safe to live in. 20 years ago, our community built a first-of-its-kind family shelter. Built on bravery, sustained by you is our anniversary theme this year, and this policy sustains that bravery. It says to families, we see you, and we will keep your home safe. YWCA Columbus urges you to pass the rental registry ordinance with strong periodic inspections, clear accountability, and transparent public reporting. Thank you for your leadership and the opportunity to testify.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony, Ms. Howard. Next, we have Don Bruner, and then again on deck, Mason Alexander, and then Joel Miller. Mr. Bruner.
Good evening. Thank you, Council, for this opportunity to testify. My name is Don Bruner. I'm the President and CEO of BR Realty Group based out of Cincinnati, the current President of the Ohio Apartment Association, and the current President of the Columbus Apartment Association. First of all, we all share the same goal of safe, quality housing. That's all of our goals. Whether it's our company, the association from Ohio or Columbus. This ordinance is white labeled as a rental registry, but it goes farther beyond that, creates unnecessary duplication, cost, and risk for both housing providers and renters. Some of our key concerns here: the city has not really demonstrated the need for a separate rental registration. Nearly identical information is already collected by the county auditors under state law. I know this for a fact. We work for, I've been part of the Cincinnati Association. We worked with the city that you guys have referenced. We submit to one registration in Cincinnati at zero cost, and it is shared between the county and the city. So as that's been recommended and discussed here, that is how we do it in Cincinnati. That's where I live today, and I've been a part of that for a number of years and sat with the mayor and Art Dahlberg, and we put that together. The county auditor's database is public and already contains a number of the units in Columbus, yet the city states it does not know the number of units. Why create another rental registry when that data already exists? Maybe work with the county to modify the one that they have already instead of trying to create two separate registries. Today it works in Cincinnati. We submit to one registry. The city pulls the email address out of that and uses that same registry. The ordinance creates $40 a unit rental tax, capped at $5,000 per community, as you mentioned. This equates to as much as $12 million. And I know you said that number is different, but there's somewhere between 300,000 and 500,000 units in the city of Cincinnati, or city of Columbus. At $40, simple math is $12 million at the lower number. We alone in our association have over 160,000 units. So when you start adding $40 to that, that's a pretty big number. So understanding where you're going to spend the $12 million is really a concern for us. These costs will be ultimately passed directly onto the renters, making housing less affordable at a time when affordability is on the lips of every person. Mandatory annual inspections are required at the property owner's cost. These inspections are inconsistent and vague. The Tier 1 lists specify systems like HVAC and fire protection, but yet Tier 2 and 3 introduce vague terms such as emergency codes, temporary or contingent registration, with no definitions. This raises process concerns and creates uncertainty and risk to being arbitrary. The other thing to think about, and I'll tell you, I have 706 units in the city today. So that's going to cost me over $19,000 based on the cap of $5,000 because 2 of my properties are above the 125. I'm going to then have to pay 62 of my units based on the math are going to have to also have individual inspections, even at a cost of $100 per inspection when you're going to have a licensed plumber and AC person. If you just use $100, which is a small number, it's now going to cost me $25,000 to comply with this. I'm a good quality landlord with units less than 30 years old. But I'm going to have to still pay $25,000, which I'm going to then directly pass on to my residents. The ordinance does not create and preserve affordable housing. It does not prevent evictions, which is also a key on everybody's lips. Instead, it adds cost and bureaucracy that reduces resources owners could otherwise invest in maintaining and improving housing. In conclusion, we ask that council does additional research to clarify the need for the ordinance and not having just one. We emphasize that housing providers work with the city on real solutions. And also, as referenced in the city of Cincinnati, there are inspections, but only on multiple code offenders, not on someone like myself. My units in the city of Cincinnati have not been inspected because I don't have code violations, so I don't have expense. So it should be looked at that it's on multiple code violations that these are actually enforced. And yes, for the bad landlords, yes, please go after them, enforce it, fine, fee, however you can do to make sure that they provide safe housing. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Brunner, and we will definitely continue to engage with the apartment association. And I will tell you, I think that many of the things that you lifted up are things that we are hearing from multiple folks, and willing to have that conversation. And I would just say transparently to, I think, the representatives that are coming to the table to talk with us, we want to have that conversation. And we want to make this work for Columbus. So I think some of the things you pointed out really stand out to me, that single registration, making sure that we're working with the county registry to strengthen that. I do, again, just want to clarify, and you have clearly better data than we do, that there's over 300,000 rental units. But again, it's, $40 per unit up to that 125. So there's, again, even in that math that you're doing, it's not for every single unit. So again, there's no way that we ever would get to $12 million. And I think, again, we would probably even adjust our fees, because the goal here is not, again, a money grab. It is simply to administer this and to make sure that we are offering something back to our housing providers. So again, looking forward to the conversation. This is just a draft. It is not an ordinance. We are working with key stakeholders to make sure that we get something that we can introduce to folks and continue the conversation. So thank you for being here.
Thank you very much.
Mason Alexander is up. Then we have Joe Miller on deck, followed by Jeff Covell.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Mason Alexander. I'm Deputy Director of Strategic Transformation and Research at Franklin County Job and Family Services. While I'm speaking today in my own capacity as a resident of the City of Columbus, my comments are in part informed by my experiences with residents I've encountered through my work. As this community saw firsthand with Sawyer Towers, Colonial Village, and several other examples, investors who owned these properties were not responsive to tenants when the properties became substandard, nor were they responsive in the aftermath when hundreds of residents of these properties had to be evacuated. While these events were covered by local news and saw responses from City Council, the Board of Commissioners, and an array of community-based organizations, I want to speak about the issue of investor-owned single-family homes. 2 weeks ago, the Cleveland Federal Reserve published an analysis of investor-owned single-family homes in 6 Ohio counties as well as Allegheny County, Pennsylvania. In their analysis, the Cleveland Fed found Franklin County's hotspot census tracts, almost all of which are within Columbus city limits, have 30% of single-family homes owned by investors. This means in neighborhoods like Linden, the Hilltop, Franklinton, the Near East, and the South Side, 1 out of every 3 homes is not owned by the occupant. Additionally, this analysis found that the rate of owner-occupant to investor transactions of single-family homes has increased 4% in the last 6 years, which is the second highest percentage change of all those other counties that were in the study. This data tells us that fewer homes are available to purchase in Columbus and Franklin County, as more are bought up by investors to rent out for profit. With a housing shortage already squeezing low and middle income families, an artificially competitive market suppresses economic mobility for working class families. And I recognize that a rental registry itself will not make housing more affordable and accessible. It can at least serve to protect more families from the same failures that resulted in mass displacement at Sawyer Towers and the rest. I support this effort by City Council because at the very least we need transparency, accountability, and better data. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your testimony and also for your service. Joe Miller is up, followed by Jeff Covell, and then Claire Brawford.
My name is Joel Miller. My wife and I own 3 single-family rental houses in the city, and full disclosure, I'm a pastor of a bread congregation, Columbus Mennonite Church in Clintonville. Owning rental properties has taught me a lot about the power dynamics between property owners and tenants. I set rental rates as the market allows and can bump it each year to keep pace with inflation. We've always had multiple applicants for openings, meaning I'm in a position of choosing who gets the house and who has to keep searching. When something needs fixed, from a leaky faucet to a failed AC unit, my responsiveness directly affects the quality of life of that family. On the flip side, I'm dependent on the tenants paying rent on time to cover our bills. Their care of the property or lack thereof has a big impact on our expenses and workload. Also, we've had 2 different tenants leave large unpaid water bills when moving out, which I discovered the city requires the landlord to pay before the next tenant can take over the water bill. I believe there are things the city can and must do that benefit both the tenant and the property owner. This is why I'm in favor of a rental registry. With a registry, owners who want to hide can't, which benefits those of us who have nothing to hide. Occasional inspections ensure that tenants are living in a safe environment, and owners are made aware of any problems that may threaten the integrity of the building. A rental registry establishes a floor of basic accountability and safety, and a floor is a good thing for a house to have. As the city seeks to better protect tenants with a rental registry, I will also make 3 basic requests for how you can better support landlords, and I'll make these quick and to the point. First, I wonder if landlords in Tier 1 who are not required to get inspections would pay a lower fee. These are often small-scale landlords, maybe $20 rather than $40. Secondly, it doesn't make sense that landlords get stuck with tenants' unpaid water bills when AEP and Columbia Gas keep those bills with the people who use the utility, the tenant. I wonder if you could help us out on this. And this other one is also unrelated to the registry, but directly related to a landlord's relationship with the city. CMHA's disastrous contract with CGA for administering the housing voucher program made everyone a loser. In the spirit of transparency, there is a large integrity gap to be made right in order for landlords to trust that CMHA will be a reliable partner with Section 8 housing vouchers. In summary, please do create this registry. And in the spirit of transparency and accountability, please do keep yourselves, the city, accountable to serving both tenants and landlords acting in goodwill. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Pastor Miller. And again, thank you for being a landlord here today, speaking in favor of this. Again, I think some of the points that you raised will help to strengthen our overall ecosystem for housing providers. I did take a note about the water bills. Unfortunately, our utilities chair is not here to address that, but we will get that, I think, answer for you. And I think it's something that we should absolutely look into. And then noted on the Tier 1 for comments that you made, and then also as well as CMHA. I know it's an issue that we are following closely. Mr. Covell.
Good evening. I'm Jeff Covell. I'm a Columbus resident, and I'm a landlord. Nothing bothers me more than my name being tarnished by others in my profession who do not take care of their properties, who allow their properties to become degraded, and effectively hold tenants of modest means hostage. I embrace the idea of a registry, especially with inspections, so that I, as a landlord, can hold my head high knowing that I passed the city's exam. The results will hopefully be published on a website so that prospective tenants can see that I meet your standards. I pride myself on keeping my properties in top shape, and I welcome the city encouraging and, if necessary, forcing others to do the same. I've heard talk about increased cost from this program leading to increased rents. If rents range from $800, $9,600 a year, to $2,000, $24,000 a year, does a $40 annual fee, about $3 a month, really have an impact on rent? If a property manager has to take 20 minutes to fill out a form, does this have an impact on rent? I think not. I remember the filth and the crime that surrounded Colonial Village, and I'm grateful that it was finally shut down and is now being redeveloped. Poorly maintained properties make my properties less desirable. Poorly maintained properties make the city I love less livable. I look forward to the rental registry proposal becoming a reality.
Thank you, Mr. Covell, and for your continued advocacy. I think you raised some really good points around $3 a month, so thank you for raising that. Next, we have Ms. Claire Bruford, as well as, and then followed by Belinda Spinosi, and then our final speaker will be Jordan McLaughlin.
Hi there. I am Claire Bruford with F&W Properties. Thank you for letting me come tonight to speak. I represent F&W Properties. We are locally owned and operated here in Columbus, and we've been in business since 1969. Today, we manage about 930 properties. Nearly 80% of them are considered affordable housing. For decades, we've partnered with groups like Amethyst, Huck House, Alvis to give people a chance, people who often really wouldn't qualify for housing anywhere else. Our mission's always been to provide safe, decent homes in convenient locations for people who need them the most. I just want to say I agree with a lot of what's been said here tonight, especially the gentleman that just spoke. I believe in transparency, compliance, but the truth is that we're already, as a landlord, we are already stretched very thin. And you guys just spoke about $3 a month isn't much, but what I'm not okay with is the endless fees that come with this. $40 a year doesn't sound like much. What are the inspection costs going to be? And frankly, many of our real estate taxes have doubled in the past couple years. You've all heard that property insurance is at an all-time high. Let's not forget labor and material costs. All those pressures get passed on to the residents. And I work in this field. 80% of my units are affordable. I am boots on the ground. I see these people and how much they struggle. And if we have more layers adding to their monthly costs, it just breaks my heart. So as a landlord, we don't pocket that money. And just this alone would add about $35,000 of fees for me. And that does not include any of the inspections. That's a lot of money. This is money that isn't going back to making their monthly bills a little easier. So I don't know. The irony here is the same people that constantly talk about lack of affordable housing, and I've heard the phrase housing shortage come up several times tonight. This is not creating affordability. This is pushing it further out of reach. So at the end of the day, once again, I'm for compliance and transparency, but I do think this is a lot of fees that are going to be passed on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Crawford, for your testimony. Next, we will have Belinda Spinosi, and then last but not least, Mr. Jordan McLaughlin. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that.
No, you got it perfect. Thank
Oh,
you very
good.
much.
There we go.
Good old-fashioned Italian name. Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Beatty, I'm so grateful for you for doing this registry. Long time coming, and people with disabilities need you to do this for us. My name is Belinda Spinosi. I'm a disability advocate, and I'm very much in support of this amendment to this proposal to create a rental registry. People with disabilities are represented in all the problems that you've already heard tonight and we're already aware of. What I would like to propose is that you add accessibility features and data into this registry. People with disabilities are having a very difficult time finding accessible housing, particularly those who are trying to get out of developmental disability centers after the lawsuit was settled with Ohio in 2020. And we still have individuals that are going to nursing homes because they cannot find accessible housing in the community. And that is just an unbearable quality of life. Shortens their life, actually. We believe fundamentally that it's very easy to ask for accessibility features to be added to this registry. Fair housing standards have been required in new housing since 1988. All we're asking is, are you compliant with fair housing? Check. Second thing that we're requesting is visitability. which requires a 10-step entrance into the apartment or house, doors with 32 inches of clear passage space, and one bathroom on the main floor where you can get into in a wheelchair. We haven't really developed Columbus housing to be universal design or think about visitability, but all these ideas are a way to look at our housing stock in the future. So we would like to also add visitability. Is your home visitable? Check. A lot of the accessible housing is difficult to explain because code has not been enforced. State law has not been enforced. Fair housing has not been enforced. 504 or ADA, which ADA is the outside part of housing. And so it's difficult all of a sudden to ask, should we collect it? But we need to plan for the future, and people with disabilities need it right now. And in the shortage of housing, accessibility is right at the top. I am also cognizant that the City of Columbus has not yet developed accessible housing code, but this registry would be a very positive step forward in collecting data on this need. And we would be happy to work with you on any details that you would need on this, but as the first entry in, are you accessible by fair housing? Are you accessible by visitability? We would really appreciate the opportunity at the beginning of this.
I have a question. You mentioned this, excuse me if I'm visibility, would you please define that for me? I'm just not familiar.
Yes, thank you for that question. Visitability, visitability, and I apologize, I didn't pronounce it correctly. It is a standard that the disability came in recognition of, that we would like to be able to visit our loved ones, our family members, into existing housing that they live in. And so often the housing stock, and it's not just here in Columbus, but it's across the nation, the housing stock has been built so that people, once they become users of wheelchairs and walkers and canes, have a difficulty getting into buildings. Stairs could be the reason why. Wheelchairs don't fit in all the doors. And it prevents us from having a quality of life. And it's not just for individuals that have accidents or the less than 3% who are born with disabilities, but it is also, as a recognition, is when we age, our bodies give away. The lucky ones of us will live, and we need additional assistance, additional accommodations, which is what we're asking for, is accommodations to be able to use existing housing. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Ms. Spinosi. I think those are all great points, and I know even Councilmember White just talked about things like recycling and other things, and I think, one, we want to get the registry up and running, and so we want to make it as seamless as possible. But I do think that there's something that we can be considering around, is there a voluntary questionnaire that folks can check those boxes, right? So I think if you are providing housing to a niche market like disabilities or recycling, or if you want to cater to those different markets, you would probably be more inclined to check those boxes, right? So it could pop up on your registry. So I think it's something to definitely think about. I know for the first iteration of this, we want to just get it up and running and make sure there's as less hurdles as possible. But I do think that we should be thinking about what's a voluntary questionnaire that landlords, if they want to fill it out, can, so that we can start to collect that data. So I think I appreciate you raising those concerns.
And I think it's quite possible we could just put a couple questions in this version, but I understand your point. We're crying out even more emergency right now, as we just found out as a disability community that the Ohio existing building code grandfathered all housing that was supposed to be created accessible up to March 1st, 2024. They just exempted all that. And now we're just now building existing housing since March 1st of 2024. So we're really desperate to find accessible housing. So if we can find a way to get into this at this level, it would help a lot.
Thank you for that.
Thank you very much for your time.
And last but not least, bringing us home.
Someone waited 2 hours just for me.
Thank you for your patience and thank you for being here. Mr. McLaughlin, the floor is yours.
Thank you for having me here today. My name is Jordan McLaughlin. I'm a Columbus resident. I'm a renter. I'm a small business owner. I'm also a guy who got so mad at the housing market that I started my own advocacy group to try to help housing become better. I'm here to speak in support of the registry. This at its core is a transparency tool, which is something we need. We don't understand what is happening on the ground. And I've been around long enough to know that anyone that's against transparency is probably doing stuff they don't want you to know. So this is something we need at a base level because I don't think a lot of people understand how bad it is out there in housing because they're not worrying about it day to day like so many other people are. This provides data that we can use to actually come up with solutions. And we need to come up with some solution because, as you said earlier, the federal government is not going to help us. The state government is not going to help us. We have to do this ourselves. And we need to then, we can't turn a blind eye on the very idea that we're looking at 2 generations that no longer know how they can afford a home, whether it's renting or owning. We're looking at Cleveland, which is now up to 24% of their single-family homes being owned by private equity. This is the wiping out of whatever generational wealth that the middle and lower class barely even has as it is. So I implore you to pass this, but I also implore you to continue to look for new ways to help with housing. This should be considered a first step. There's so many other things that we know are problems, but it's hard to fix those without the data, and this is a great way to start getting that data and to be able to do the right thing. I've got 2 suggestions to throw out. One is potentially consider having the rent in the registry. That will help you determine if some communities are being taken advantage of or be completely discriminated against. And also, I think you need to include something that says they need to disclose who their highest level parent company is. Because I've dealt with these people, they will hide in a maze of LLCs, and repeat offenders will keep doing the same thing under a different name. It's not up to us to find out who they are. They need to tell us who they are and what they're doing in our community. So thank you. I strongly encourage this and appreciate the council and everyone here coming up and talking about this. This is a fantastic proposal. I got 20 seconds left. I'm good.
Thank you. I just want to thank again everyone who took the time to come out today. I don't have any questions. Yeah, thank you. I got the notes. Just want to thank everyone who took the time today to come out to engage with us and voice their support, concerns, questions, and more. I understand that this policy and many policies that we are looking at, change is hard. It's not easy. But I think that as we are rapidly growing, our city is evolving and changing. And to just accept that the status quo and what we have been doing is working, would us be putting our heads in the sand and waiting for the tsunami of growth just to come and wash us away. So yes, this will not be perfect, let's be clear. It will be bumpy to get it off the ground. That's what policy is. It's never perfect. But I believe that if we work together, we can get to something that works for our city. Again, I want to reemphasize, there is no ordinance yet. This is just a proposal. We want to continue to work with community, folks that are for this, folks that are against this. And so I would say, please lean in. Don't just simply be upset or attack me on social media. It's fine. I try not to read the comments. I signed up for it. It's okay to do that. But also, go ahead and shoot me an email. Reach out to our office so we can engage with you, understand what your concerns are. And also I will say on the other end, if you are for this, as we go through this process, when there are changes that you don't like, don't simply not engage with me and blow me up. Reach out to me and let's work through it. Because again, that's how we shape a policy that works for everyone. And so I want to reiterate and underscore my office is committed to making sure that we get something across the finish line that works for Columbus, that is balanced, but does not lose the spirit that this is about transparency. It's about accountability. It is about us getting the data that we need so that we can continue to shape tools and shape and drive our investments and drive policy that make a better ecosystem for all housing providers and most importantly for our residents. That is really what this is about. And so I want to thank you all for engaging with us. Again, this is just the first step. We will have, again, another hearing once we get to a place of actually drafting legislation. Again, my office, you can contact us, either Jonathan Brown at jbbrown@columbus.gov or JP Dorval in my office, jpdorval@columbus.gov. You can also engage with our president's office. He is the chair of our Housing and Homelessness Committee. I am leading this charge, but I am partnering with our good friends. I see Jessica here from the council president's office as well. So we are all in this together, and we want to get this done and get it done right. Before I close, any closing comments or thoughts from the administration, our city attorney? All right. With that, everyone, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for hanging in there with us, and have a great evening.